You know what I mean? So I apologize if I say things that are incorrect or whatever the case may be. But I'm only working with what I got here. And I want to thank you guys for actually having me out today. And today we're going to talk about powerlessness. We're going to really try to dive deep into powerlessness. What is powerlessness? What does it mean? And the only thing we need to do today is, and the reason I say we have to be open minded is because the only thing we need to do today is practice confessing our powerlessness, being able to identify what I am powerless over and what I am not powerless over, what I can control and what I cannot control. Okay. And going deep into this, and I mean, a lot of the discussion, I may start veering off like rail, going off on crazy tangents and rants like I normally do. But for the most part, the only thing we need to do is just confess that we are powerless. And a lot of what we're going to talk about is our powerlessness over our addiction in particular. Although I'm going to go off into little tangents and shit, for the most part, we're going to talk about our powerlessness over addiction, which is what brings us here. And last week, we were talking about obsession. If you don't recall some of the things, not last week, 2 weeks ago, you probably don't recall some of the things I talked about 2 weeks ago. So just to refresh your memory, I got some of this stuff up here. So the only thing we need to do today is admit that we are powerless over our addiction. Our addiction, I think this is the definition we came up with last week. To be an addict or have have an addiction means that have a physical and mental dependence on a substance, thing, or activity, and cannot stop without incurring adverse effects. Now, we broke this down a little bit as well last week or 2 weeks ago, and I did a demonstration or explain how I may have done this. If not, this may be new information for you guys, which is super valuable information. But we talked about physical withdrawals, how long physical withdrawals take to kick in, to alleviate. We took all drugs, put them in a melting pot, and came to say that your average withdrawal symptoms are going to last about 2 weeks. And a lot of people, their goal in recovery, something that is a goal for most people who get into recovery that's outside of their zone of proximity, which means it's like a stretch. It's like a stretch of a dream, but it is attainable to people, is 1 year sober. And 2 weeks only accounts for 4% of 1 year sober, which means that the other 50 weeks of that year. Now that number, the 4%, is dealing with physical withdrawals. That means the other 50 weeks and beyond account for 96% and up. So the longer you stay sober, the more of your recovery from addiction is going to be mental. All right. Some people, you look at someone's pattern. Say somebody is a quote unquote repeat relapser. You look at their pattern. Maybe they have a pattern of staying 3 months sober. If they were only staying sober for 3 months, right, that 2 weeks accounts for a different percentage, much larger percentage of what they believe recovery to be, having never experienced recovery before. Like, if you've never eaten chocolate cake, you don't know what chocolate cake tastes like, let alone different varieties of chocolate cake. So if you've never had more than 3 months sober, then you never know what being sober through different varieties of life circumstances is, and how to deal with those on a mental aspect. And what does it mean to deal with it on the mental aspect? We called this last week obsession, 2 weeks ago, obsession. And I recall asking you guys, what have you been obsessed over lately? And we went into a deep discussion on divorce, if anybody recalls that. So that is where we ended up on that discussion, we got into how that obsession takes us away from areas of life, like being present in the moment. We talked about how that takes us away from our recovery, et cetera, et cetera. Now, just imagine that same idea, but your obsession is not a divorce or a person or something like that. That obsession is a physical, and it's a drug, right? It's a substance. An obsession by definition is um obsession by definition is a to preoccupy or fill the mind continually, intrusively, and to a troubling extent. So if someone is continually, intrusively preoccupied with alcohol or drugs, you may see areas of their life become unmanageable to balance. Like it's difficult to balance a job and an addiction. It's difficult to balance. It's difficult to walk. You know what I mean? Like if you drink too much, it's difficult to just walk, to like speak words, to communicate, to drive a vehicle. Now, the main thing, yes, question.
We can't hear you. You keep kind of coming in and out. So we're gonna have someone look at the computer.
Okay, great. Fantastic.
Jimmy!
Yo!
Hi!
Yo, what's good? How we feeling?
I have a few more.
Is it bad? Is my lag bad?
Oh. I think it's us.
It could be me, but we'll have to find out. We're about to find out now.
I don't know. I don't know this. I don't know that. Jimmy,
Yo.
I don't know what I can do for my end.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what I can do either. Is it can you hear me, or is the voice coming out too?
Right now it's fine, but it was sounding like you were like talking into a fan.
Okay. If that continues to happen, I have a microphone that I can go get, and we can give that a shot or something like that.
That sounds fine.
Sounds fine. Well, usually it's always happens when I'm on a rant and I'm saying a lot of words really, really fast. That's when it starts to lag. But when I'm just chilling, it doesn't seem to lag when we're all just like hanging out. So should I just continue, or are we gonna try more things? Now I'm on mute.
No, you're not. You're good right now.
Okay, great. Then I'll just continue. So now let's get back to where we were in the discussion. So now you're talking about an addiction preoccupying or filling my mind continually, intrusively, into a troubling extent. I'm not going to be able to stay at work. I may not be able to sleep. I may not be able to shower, and that's just not only with the mental dependence. Like, if I'm obsessed, like I remember being at work, obsessing over a drug dealer texting me back. Dude, that totally takes me away from my job. You know what I mean? Like maybe I'm focusing, but my focus is limited. Like what I'm doing as a job is constrained to being able to leave at any minute to meet my drug dealer when he's outside. That is impacting my work, right? Now, you have and I'm powerless over that. Like I can't, like no matter how hard I try to act normal and act cool, I'm still acting shady. You know what I'm saying? And it's like even though I'm really trying to walk or drive normally, I can't. Doing one of these, you ever do this? The one eye drive? And you're like, oh my God, bro. You got one eye open. You know what I mean? It's like,
I've done that.
it's like, yo, if you could drive with two eyes open, you would. But the problem, huh?
Would. I said amen.
Right?
I could, but I just one eye because I'm so, drunk.
Yes, dude. And I mean, the problem is, now this sounds so it actually is frustrating because it really boils down to like a just say no type of attitude. But the the problem is our inability to admit our powerlessness leads to unmanageability. So because we lack the ability to say, no, thank you, that's too much, I'm driving, we end up drinking and losing our ability. And as a result of that, unmanageability occurs. Does that make sense? And that's what it boils down to. And when you get into like the logic, now that's alcohol. Take something like fentanyl, right? You are using one fentanyl pill. There's no telling how much is in one pill, in one side of the pill versus the other side of the pill. It's like a chocolate chip cookie. You know, I mean, maybe each chocolate chip cookie should have 7 chocolate chips in them, but one may have 12, another has fucking 3, another has 14. It's the same thing with fentanyl. There's no like FDA regulation. Now, alcohol's different. It's regulated in certain ways. You see what I'm saying? But like when you start going down to drugs, it's even more shady. It's even more scary. You know, you really don't even know what you're doing. Even with, certain medications, I remember like taking Xanax or Klonopin and being powerless over like how many have I taken today? Like how like forgetting completely how many I've taken and blaming other people for stealing my pills. And I fucking took them. You ever been so drunk you drank so much and everybody else knows you drank all that alcohol because it's fucking obvious how shit-faced you are, but we blame other people for taking our alcohol, drinking our booze. You know what I mean? It's like, no, dude, you drank that. And we are flabbergasted that they would even assume that. You know what I mean? And it's like, there ain't nothing anyone can say. And this is a part of like the belief system and the insanity that leads to even deeper levels of unmanageability. You know what I mean? Like some of these behaviors lead us to go deeper into a belief system that maybe this is funny, this is fun. This is like oh my, like I remember hearing stories of, dude, Jimmy, you were yelling at us last night because you thought we like stole your Xanax and shit. I'm like, yo, that's crazy. You know what I mean? And they're like, not funny, bro. You know what I mean? You punch Steve in the face. And I'm like, yeah, bro, he's got one of those faces you just want to punch, dude. You know what I mean? It's because his face is built like that. And they're just like looking at me like, bro, Jimmy, you can't do that. And dude, like, then you look at, like, then you want to get into the real deep level of powerlessness on how maybe I'm powerless as of even generating a belief like that. Like maybe it's natural that I would make a joke out of that. You know what I mean? Maybe it's natural and normal that something would happen. Because why? If I don't joke about it, just understand, if I don't joke about it, then that means something's wrong with me. Then that means that I'm fucked up, and I'm not fucked up. You guys are fucked up. You know what I mean? So all this is little pieces of denial that push us further and further into the possibility of some crazy shit happening. Where if I was able to just sit back and say, you know what? I shouldn't have hit him last night. Like, I'm sorry, guys. That's crazy. That's so unlike me. I should have never done anything like that. But no, that's normal Jimmy shit at that point. You know what I mean? So it's like, so now the question kind of lies, why wasn't I, and everybody's got maybe stories like this where you could go back and we're going to get into some of them, but why wasn't I able to recognize my addiction at that time? Like, why am I powerless over recognizing this? And now we're going to get into the idea of powerlessness, maybe even a little bit about how denial plays a role in this. But we'll start off with, you guys should be able to see my screen. What does it mean to be powerless over something? Okay. If I am powerless over something, that means that I am without ability, influence, or power. Now, we're going to get to power. We're going to go through these one by one. I hate how they put the word in the definition, but whatever. We're going to try to move on past it. If I am powerless, now without alcohol, you can drive fine. Like here's the logic behind these things, okay? Without it, you do fine. And some people say no, without it I go into tremors. But I mean, once those tremors are out of you, without it you do fine. You know what I mean? You ever hear people say this? Great guy when he's here, wonderful mom when she's fucking sober. You know what I mean? Coolest fucking person ever when they're not fucking drinking, you know? It's because I don't have any ability to change who I become after I put this drug into my body. Like once you, that's a level of powerlessness that some of us need to understand. Once it goes into your body, it has an effect. It does something to you. Like you look at something like a micro dose of mushrooms. Why micro dose mushrooms? If people claim it does nothing, then why fucking do it, kid? You know what I mean? It obviously does something. And where does the powerlessness begin? If we were going to draw this on like a scale, let's say, let's go to another page. Let's take this line, boom. Let's put this as like a range of drugs. So 14 grams. Is that a lot of mushrooms?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know someone out there fucking can do this mathematics with me. Okay. So let's go down a little bit further and let's go to 3.5 grams of mushrooms. Is that enough mushrooms to make somebody trip?
Yeah.
All right. Good. Let's go down to one, maybe half that, 1.75. That's enough, right?
You feel something. You don't feel something. I don't trip out though.
No, you will feel something. That's right. All right. Let's.
On a fail. 3.5 grams is a good start point.
That is a heavy dose.
That's an A. Right.
That is, dude, for someone who has never, you got to remember, dude, someone who's never consumed these drugs before, if they were to eat 3.5 grams of mushrooms, they would be on another fucking planet, dude. Right?
That's the point, right?
1 gram, I mean, you could just continue down to all the way down to people do, I've heard some people do this much, and we'll call this 0.25 grams. Why? Why would they do something like that? If we get all the way down and say something like that does nothing at that point, then why do it? It's got to have some power. You know what I'm saying? It's like, why would they sell nips at the liquor store? Because they fucking do something. Why aren't you hiding fucking orange juice behind the fucking toilet? Because it doesn't do jack shit. You know what I mean? You're not hoarding milk. You're not hoarding green beans. You're not drinking or using too much fucking, whatever, dude. These things do something to us. They have an effect. And that effect, I have like a perception of control. The perception of control is tolerance. But that is not mitigating powerlessness overall. You see what I'm saying? It's still, powerlessness is still present even when my tolerance is increasing. Like, okay. Now let's get into some of the other definitions. Like, what does it mean? Hold on. To not have ability. So alcohol, drugs, whatever, can remove our ability to possess the means or skill to do something, like walking, driving, maybe high functioning skills like a job performance, right? Maybe the skills to wake up early, the ability to get out of bed, the ability to now. Is it the ability to physically do it, or is it the ability to do it without becoming overwhelmed? Like, yeah, maybe some people could do these things, but they can't do it without being stressed out or overwhelmed. And they don't want to be stressed out or overwhelmed. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, no, that's just too tough. Like, and let me tell you something. A lot of us may possess these skills and means to do things. And if you don't take advantage of honing in on that ability and continuously staying on top of it, then you may lose it. Like, if you don't step up to the ability to be a friend, maybe you lose that relationship. If you don't step up to the ability of what it takes to be a parent, maybe the government will. You know what I mean? Maybe somebody else will. If you don't step up to the ability to be a partner or whatever the case may be, then maybe somebody else will who has that ability and possesses those means, because people have needs. And not only do people in our lives have needs, which addiction gets in the way of our ability to provide those needs to people, but we also have needs. You know what you need? You need a fucking liver that works. You need a kidney that works. You need a fucking normal sleep schedule. You need a brain that's not going to rationally make decisions. You need to fucking expose yourself to some of these difficult emotions that you've been avoiding. You need to bury the hatchet with some people. You need to get courageous and brave and fucking step up to the plate in some areas. And I mean, if you don't want to do that, then I don't know why you're here, because that's all that we're trying to do here. And addiction is what we have diagnosed as the number one thing removing us from having that ability. And we also have no influence. By the time we get sober, our word means maybe nothing. Our changes in behavior may have little impact. The capacity to have an effect on the character, like, just consider you get caught drinking and driving. But you don't understand. I'm an addiction counselor. It doesn't matter, bud. Put your hands behind your back. But doesn't matter, dude. You can't change you cannot change who you have become. You have no power. You cannot influence your character. Addiction removes your ability to influence your own character, your mental and moral quality. It's like when you drink too much too often, you get handcuffed into being identified as an alcoholic. Like, and trying to, we have no influence outside of that character. Some people may have managed to stay in the closet with their addiction for so long, but in order for you to get here, you had to have recognized powerlessness over running away from or hiding from the idea that you are not an addict or an alcoholic. Just consider how much drugs influences the development of the human brain, right? It says development next. It says character, then development. I mean, you look at exercising impacts, like if a 13-year-old starts like lifting weights, that impacts the development of their body. What happens to the brain if a 13-year-old kid starts drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, taking psilocybin, LSD, smoking crack, doing cocaine? I mean, dude, what happens to the brain doesn't stop developing until 25. And it's not like after you blow out the candles on your birthday cake, all of a sudden they're like, your brain's like, woohoo, we're done growing. It's like, I don't know, maybe it takes longer. Maybe it takes less time, you know? I don't know. There's no switch that goes off. So it's like, how much does it impact the development of a brain? Well, I mean, I don't know. You could look at a fetus. You could see how alcohol or drinking or smoking impacts the development of a fetus, or even a baby who's around secondhand smoke, right? You could see how someone's development as an individual through childhood in teenage years living with someone with alcoholism may impact their development. I mean, there's data around divorced families impacting the development of a children's brain. I mean, alcohol, you're talking a literal drug, dude. I mean, that is all right. Fuck the brain. What about the lungs? What about your cell? What about your hormones? You know what I'm saying? How does you have? I'm not looking for any fucking debates here, but you have like 13-year-old kids changing their gender, stunting the natural development of their hormones, dude. You know what I mean? When they get to the age of 18 or their body stops developing, bro, go ahead, do whatever you want to do. But I think that we don't have enough information and knowledge long term about how those things impact people long term. You know what I mean? That's just my opinion, you know. And it's the same. And I mean, you look at the same thing with maybe giving children medication of any sort, ADHD, ADD. And then you get into go even deeper into something like this. We're feeding children red dye 40. We're feeding children atrocious amounts of sugar on a daily basis. Hey, I'm no better. I'm guilty of this shit. I feed my kid this stuff. You know what I mean? How does eating a highly processed diet impact my brain development, impact the development of my white blood cells or something like that? And am I powerless over how this diet impacts the way my brain develops? Does this diet that I have and had as a 13-year-old kid and beyond impact the way that I view the world today, the way that I view some of my relationships? Is it possible that maybe I'm powerless at? I mean, I think I gave the example of look at somebody who drops out of school compared to some at 15 compared to somebody who gets a college education. They graduate with a degree at 22, right? Just look at the opportunities. You know what I mean? They're powerless. Like if you're not going to school, you're powerless over the opportunity you have versus going to school and those opportunities. Like if someone is, and it goes back to drugs and alcohol, like if someone's constantly putting themselves in a bar then you could see what kind of opportunities may come from that. And not only of just opportunities, I don't know, career-wise, meeting people-wise, you know what I mean? Things like influence-wise, right? But you could also be impacting yourself from just sitting around drinking alcohol. Like, how does just, if someone sits around and drinks alcohol instead of walking or exercising or something like that, like what might come from that? Like, you're powerless over what happens from that. You know what I mean? There's no control in it. And you look at some of these drugs, like alcohol plays a major, like it puts us right into an adrenaline state. It fucks with our hormones. This is scientifically known, you know. And if I don't, and perhaps I've never had control, you know. Perhaps no one's ever had control over drugs and alcohol and behavior. Like, once we're under the influence of drugs and alcohol, we don't get to influence our behavior or behavior of someone else or the effect itself. Like, if I take too much, I don't get to control the effect of too much. I am just along for the ride. I don't influence the effect. I have no, you can't just sober up. That's not it. You don't have, the only thing that can influence the effect of a drug itself, like we'll take fentanyl, is another drug or some course of events like pumping your stomach or something like that. We're talking about naloxone to help an overdose, right? Like, once we use, drink a certain amount, we start slurring our words. We can't control that. We have no influence over that. We have no influence over other people believing or disbelieving us. We lose it. And we have no power. We don't have the ability to act in a particular way. We don't have the ability to influence people or a course of events. Like, if you get pulled over drinking alcohol, like a DUI, you don't choose the events that come after that. And if alcohol is the thing that is causing me to lose power over these things, then if I remove that, maybe there's a chance. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns yet before we jump into the literature? Thoughts? Anything? You're following me, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so now now I'm going to go a little bit deeper into how recovery is going to be impacted by this powerlessness, right? Like, you don't get to choose what gives you a desire to use. Okay? You are powerless over that desire to use. Now, there are things that are more likely to cause a desire to use, and knowledge of these things can give you power because you're not exposing yourself to them. So you can't, all right, this is just, you can't unsee things. I'm sorry to tell you, but you really can't. You know what I mean? Like, if you see some crazy shit, it's not like you can just like unsee that. Like, there it is in your brain. So think about that. Just keep that in mind. Like, when you go through life, you can't unsee things. So, maybe just like, I remember this guy, I don't know, I'm just going to share. There was this guy, I'm sure everybody's got a story like this, but there was this guy, there was a bunch of traffic. This guy got into a car accident, and you drive by the car accident. I saw the fucking guy, and he was like pinned out, and it was fucked up, bro. But I can't unsee. I should have never looked. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. So now, You can't unsee things. You can't unhear things. We're going right back to the senses, right? So you need to protect your senses. You are powerless over your senses impacting your emotions. That's just your brain and body's way of interpreting the situation to optimize your survival rate. So it's like if you are in a situation where you have a desire to use, that's your body saying, you got to fucking get the fuck out of here, or you got to do something about this. And some of us may currently even recognize that we're unable to do something about this. So that comes the idea. I'll just start, rifling off some questions. These questions are in response to reservations that we may have. But knowing these things and critically thinking about these things may prevent a relapse. For instance, there may be people. Are there people associated with your addiction that do you think it's wise to go around people who are associated with your addiction? So perhaps you're critically thinking about some of the people who are associated with your addiction right now, right? Like, okay, there are some people who I definitely should not be around. You know what I mean? But I got some family members that I used with, who are associated with what am I not supposed to see my family anymore? No, but that is something to be aware of. Like if you're in a situation where you have a desire to use, and maybe you're around one of those friends you shouldn't be around, or maybe you're around one of those family members that you used to use with, it's like this may give some logic to the emotion that you're experiencing, and you can take your power back by acting on recovery. Like oh fuck, I'm gonna call my sponsor. Oh fuck, I'm gonna get out of here. Oh shit, this is like exactly what we've talked about. You know what I mean? And then you got, are there places? Do you think it's wise to go around places that that you have associated with your addiction?
No.
I agree. There are some places that for sure I should not be going around. Not going around the trap, not going to a bar, probably not going to go down the liquor aisle of a grocery store. But I used in my house. Are you telling me I shouldn't go home? I was getting high at my mom's house and my everywhere, dude. Are you telling me I shouldn't go those places? I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if I had a desire to use when I was there, though. And maybe this is where time is very helpful. All right, bro. You got to go to your mom's house for whatever, Thanksgiving or something like that. It's like, okay, you got to go there. Can you go? Is 2 hours enough for you to go there, say, hey, eat food and get out of there and stay sober? You're not going to stay there for 4 hours. 4 hours, maybe just too much time, just chilling, being exposed, and just consider what it's like. Now, just consider the levels of some of this exposure that you're powerless over. First off, the media is going to try to grab your eyes and your attention. All right, you only have so much time in the world, 80 years or so, we'll say, right? And you also, in that 80 years, only have a certain amount of focus. You can't focus on two things at once. You can only focus on one thing at once, So you have everything in the world grabbing at your attention. You got your phone, your job, the news, the media. You watch a commercial on TV, and it's a Budweiser commercial, and they're trying to grab your attention to get you to go drink alcohol. And how are your senses being exposed? You're not even directly exposed to alcohol. You're just watching it on a TV. You're listening to it being dranken and used responsibly, So you're like, two senses are being tingled at that point. Maybe your memory too, because memory plays a role in the experience is what they call it, plays a role in this too. Like shit. I remember when I used to drink like that. That's 3 ways that your brain is being tricked on right now to motivate you to go consume alcohol. So hopefully, if you recognize this, you change the channel. I mean, these are just things that one could do. Some people find themselves powerless over a commercial like that. And this is what they hope. They hope that there's some brain dead person out there who has no idea that what they watch drives their behavior, and they see this commercial and they go buy alcohol. And that's what happens to some people because they're just sitting there, well, chill, look at this. And they just take it in, and it goes in one ear, and they're like, golly, that Burger King sure does look good. And they go out and they go, let's go to Burger King, bro. You want to go to Burger King? And they're like, yeah, dude, I want that Big Mac, looks good. Meanwhile, you're powerless over what happens when you eat a hamburger that if you let that motherfucker sit out for a year, it's going to look like they just fucking made it. You're powerless over most of the carcinogens found in these types of meals is in the bun. I mean, you just don't, and you didn't cook that. How do you know the guy who cooked that didn't wipe his ass with it? How do you know he didn't just like play with his balls and then make your sandwich?
Oh, shit. Come on, Jay. Now you're ruining it for me.
How do you know they didn't do that? How do you know the person, dude, I'm not even going to go deep into it, but how do you know like the person who made your drink didn't fuck with it, dude? How do you know that the person who made, like, say you get a fucking margarita or a fucking drink like that at a Mexican, you don't know how much fucking alcohol's in that. You have no idea. And you got 4 of them. And you think you can drive, dude. That's like 12 drinks, bro. No one can drive after 12 drinks. And you think you had 4 over a period of 2 hours. So you're like, that's kind of like 2. It's like, bro, that's not how that works. Like that's the other thing is people think that they understand anatomy and they understand biology and they understand how this shit works. It's like, I don't fucking understand. I'm still watching YouTube videos learning. You think you got it all figured out? And it would make sense. Why would it make sense? Because we're basically like we have like doctorate degrees in the getting and using and finding ways and means to get more. Just consider this, right? Someone who gets a doctorate degree, they are fully focused, invested in, like, someone who gets a doctorate degree in like fucking hands. They're a hand doctor, right? Bro, they know everything about the hand. They know like all the muscles, the skin, all this shit about the hands. They've been studying hands for years. They've looked at hundreds and thousands of different fucking hands and got studies and shit like that. That's an alcoholic. That's what an alcoholic does with alcohol. That's what a drug addict, like, by the time I got sober, I was a literal walking fucking pillidentifier.com, dude. I was a literal walking drug encyclopedia. And by the time I got sober, dude, I thought, what am I supposed to do with all this information? Like, I just spent the past 15 years of my life educating myself on how to sneak and get high and manipulate and this. It's like, now what? It's like, have you seen the video of the guy who spent half of his life studying anteaters? Oh, man. I got to show you guys this video.
Oh, yeah.
This guy spent half of his life studying anteaters. I think it's a joke, but it's funny. It's relative.
You've tuned in at the right time because guess what?
It's time for Today Now's Critter Corner, and we're going to be talking all about anteaters.
Hey, that's right, Tracy. We're sitting down here with Dr. Franklin Kearns. He has just published the definitive book on anteaters, A Complete Anatomy, Behavior, and History. Dr. Kearns, we're honored to have you join us on Today Now this morning.
Thanks, Jim. Always a pleasure to be actually conversing with another human.
He says that because he's been living with anteaters for, 15 years you spent living in the forests of Argentina. Tell us about these incredibly interesting creatures.
Well, they're not very fascinating. The anteater is a solitary, sedentary creature that spends its time sniffing around the dirt, eating, sleeping. So it wasn't fascinating, certainly not after the first 5 years.
Well, I'm very excited at the prospect of meeting one. Let's bring out the anteater.
No. Why in the world would I want to bring an anteater?
Oh, I thought you were going to bring an anteater
that's
with
what
you.
I told your producers because I didn't want them to bring it.
Okay, well, let's just talk about them then, because do you have any favorite anteater facts that you'd like to toss around?
They're on the endangered species list, and they're all going to die soon.
Well, it must have been interesting at some level, and I found the book to be very interesting myself.
That's surprising to me.
Well,
there's pages and pages about the brown stripe of the lesser anteater known as tamundua of the Venezuelan grasslands.
Tamundua. That's an interesting name. What does tamandua mean in Venezuelan?
Catcher of ants.
One of the things I found fascinating about your book, Dr. Kearns, is that anteaters don't really eat ants. They eat termites.
You know what? It's strange. I can't talk about anything else but anteaters.
We just have a few minutes left. We don't want to miss out on looking at the footage of the anteaters that we have to look at.
Oh, God.
Here they are. They certainly look cute.
No, they're not cute.
They're not cute?
No, they're not little. They're not cute. Their tongue alone is 2 feet long.
That's, interesting.
15 years.
Yeah. I think we're just about out of the footage anyway.
When I was 9 years into the project, I said to myself, give it up, leave this junk. But instead, I convinced myself to stay. I said to myself, publishing the #1 resource book on anteaters will be worth it. But the day it was published, it was completely anticlimactic. It felt like the physical manifestation of 15 years of boredom came into being.
I'm sure that...
Don't apologize. I'm the one who wasted my life on this.
Oh.
Yo, stop, dude. Isn't that crazy? Is that real? I think that's fake. But nonetheless, some of us may feel that way about our alcoholism. Like, imagine someone's like, wow, so you've consumed more alcohol than anyone on the face of the planet. What's that like? When I was 30, I thought about getting the hell out of this. Like, why am I doing this? My wife left me. I got my 4th DUI. Do you know how hard it is to drink liquor out of a toilet in jail? Do you know how hard it is to smuggle alcohol up your ass into prison? You know what I mean? It's like funny stuff. So, give me 1 second. Hold on 1 second. Mom, this is like super distracting. Just slow down. You just got to slow down. Okay, so now, moving into the literature. I'm going to read this, and we'll probably get ready to take a little bit of... Oh, wait. We'll never mind. We'll get into it. So the question I had before was, how did I not recognize this problem earlier on in my addiction? And the answer to that is denial. The refusal to accept the reality of the situation that we are going into. We are always comparing our addiction to someone else's. My addiction is not as bad as them or this. Blaming, just continuously doing this to the point that we reach our absolute rock bottom. So generally, that is what ended people up in here. And the sooner you can recognize that you were powerless over getting to a place like that, that is when the forgiveness process begins. Generally, people are unable to stop feeling resentful or angry towards themselves for what they've done in the past. But the sooner we can start understanding that anyone who is drinking as much as I was drinking would have gone through the same problem, yada, 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 the sooner then we can start forgiving ourselves. But I want to move on to powerlessness. That's a little bit about denial, but I want to move on to powerlessness so that we can get into where we have to be. Okay. As addicts, we react to the word powerless in a variety of ways. Some of us recognize that a more accurate description of our situation simply could not exist and admit our powerlessness with a sense of relief. Others recoil at the word, connecting it with weakness or believing it to indicate some kind of character deficiency. Understanding powerlessness and how admitting our own powerlessness is essential to our recovery will help us get over any negative feelings we may have about the concept. So, any negative, angry, resentful feelings we may have about, bro, no, I have power. Like, let it go, dude. Dude, chill out, man. You don't. Like, once you are able to like get over that hump and admit your powerlessness and how that's essential to your recovery, your negative feelings are just going to dwindle away. We are powerless when the driving force in our life is beyond our control. Our addiction certainly qualifies as an uncontrollable driving force. We cannot moderate or control our drug use or other compulsive behaviors, even when they are causing us to lose the things that matter most to us. We cannot stop, even when to continue will surely result in irreparable physical damage. We find ourselves doing things that we would never do if it weren't for our addiction, things that would make us shudder with shame when we think of them. We may even decide that we don't want to use, that we aren't going to use, and realize that we are unable to stop when the opportunity presents itself. Like, I remember sitting around knowing that there was no opportunity for me to use that day, wasn't going to happen. And then all of a sudden, somebody hits me up and they say, come on, let's go. And I'm like, I have to go. I go. I'm unable to not do it when the opportunity presents itself. We may have tried to abstain from drug use or other compulsive behaviors, perhaps with some success for a period of time without working a program, only to find our untreated addiction eventually takes us right back to where we were before. These are the people who are like, bro, I can control it. Like, I was smoking pot and drinking for like years, dude. I didn't work them. I stayed sober on my own. I didn't go to rehab. I got sober when I was 18 and I stayed sober for 30 years. No program, no AA. And I look at them and say, well, looks like you're in rehab now. So something about your program didn't work, dude. I don't know what to say. Like, something about what you were doing before wound you up in front of my goofy face. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. Usually people who see my face in this situation are still out there drinking.
It's not sobriety.
That's correct. I agree 100%. So anyone can get sober. Like, you can get sober. I mean, anybody can get sober. Being in recovery is totally different. It's a complete lifestyle change. You know, rap is something you do. Hip hop is something you live. You know what I mean? So it's the same thing with this. It's like sober is something that people just do, get sober. You know, being in recovery is something that you live on a day-to-day basis.
Amen, bro.
And in order to work this step, we need to prove later to ourselves our own individual powerlessness on a deep level. Now, your own individual powerless, it says our own individual powerlessness, but when you just accept powerlessness like unanimously, you see that everybody's powerless. Now, there are some parts of your life that you're powerless over that other people don't experience, but they too would experience powerlessness having been in your situation. So like I don't know. For instance, like I have kids, you know what I mean? I'm powerless over having kids and how my addiction, if I were to relapse, would impact my children, right? And some people don't have children, but just because they don't have children doesn't mean they would not also experience a similar type of powerlessness. You see what I'm saying? So, unmanageability to me is more individualized than powerlessness, only because what made your life unmanageable to end up here may not be somebody else's story. So somebody may end up here after 1 DUI, somebody may end up here after 4 DUIs, somebody has no DUIs. You know what I mean? It's like what makes your life unmanageable enough to get into treatment or something like that is unmanageable to you. Some people, maybe their finances never got out of order. Maybe they never lost their job. Other people, it took losing their job to get to a place of recovery. All right. Let's take a break. This is a good place to take a break. We'll come back. We're going to go through some of these questions, and then we're going to get into a little bit about unmanageability. And I have a video or two to demonstrate power. Did I ever show the anatomy video in here yet?
I think I've seen it.
Robin's seen it. All right, you guys have not seen that video then. You would definitely know if you saw cadavers. So that come back at 10:25 and we'll keep on rocking and rolling.
Thank you.
All righty, thank you.